Greetings and welcome to the Cancer Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Morton, and it is our honor and our pleasure to have a very special guest for you on this segment. Now, if you're a baseball fan, you know who he is. He's Hall of Famer Andre Dawson of Miami, Florida. If you're not a baseball fan, that's okay. Stick around and hear the details of Andre's journey with prostate cancer. So now let's get to it. And Andre, welcome to Cancer Interviews.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
Now, Andre, we always like to start off by learning more about our guests, exclusive of their cancer journey. So first off, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners who are baseball fans and those who are not and not so familiar with you, if you would tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your life in baseball, and then your life after baseball.
Well, I grew up in Miami, Florida, and baseball was always a big part of me growing up. I got my initial start with one of my uncles who was a Parks and Recreation director, and he started a Little League baseball program. And I used to work out with the men's travel team. I got the nickname the Hawk that way. And I just always had this desire, this love to play the game of baseball and to just go as far with it as it would allow me. And I found in middle school when I would have to fill out the vocational interest forms, I said professional baseball player. And my counselor would say, okay, what's your next choice? And I would say, well, that's probably the only thing I really want to do, because I admired at that time the greats of Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, because they always stood out. They were the ones that were constantly in the news. And I was given an opportunity to play and start in high school. I got hurt in high school, had a devastating knee injury. And as a result, all the scouts just disappeared. And with that, I found that I had to go to college and go out for the baseball team as a walk-on. That would eventually lead me to Florida A&M University, where I did try out. I made the team as a freshman, and then the starting lineup as a freshman, and I was given a scholarship. And from there, I played 3 years. I was drafted by the Montreal Expos at the end of my junior year. And I felt that my dreams, my childhood dreams, had come to fruition. I just wanted to have that opportunity to play at that level and see just how far I could go. And I had a very, very productive college career. I had a very, very successful minor league career. And after a year and a couple of months, I found myself in the big leagues. And I said, wow. I said, well, God is good. And from there, I was able to play for 20 years. I set out to set some goals and say, I want to play 15 years. And the average lifespan was only 4 years. And with the history of the knee problems, I knew it was going to be a huge task. But during the 20-year career, I was able to accumulate enough numbers that were Hall-worthy in the eyes of a lot of people. And it took 9 years before I was elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame. But I played the game far longer than I would have ever expected. And I have to attribute probably my success at that level was my work ethic. And I had a grandmother who was my chief mentor growing up. She would always say to me, get down on your knees, be thankful of your blessings, be thankful before you even receive them, and put your education as your first priority. That will be something that can't be taken away from you, and it will kind of set the groundwork for your life going forward. And I always took that with me. And I just, from her teachings, kind of felt that I had the backing of so many people who wanted to see me at that level have a lot of success, the success that I did. And I look back on the importance and the role that they played in my life. And, I attribute the fact that I was able to persevere for that long. Post-career, I worked in the Miami/Florida Marlins organization for 15 years, now 3 years in the Cubs organization. And I eventually had a funeral home fall into my lap as a result of being an investor. And that's where I am today. I'm the owner of a funeral home here in South Florida, and I devote a lot of time to that.
Now, let's talk about the work ethic and how it manifested itself. One of the things that you did in your playing days was something that really placed you well ahead of your time. When your team was at bat and you were in the dugout, you would be busy charting opposing pitchers, learning about them, assembling your own little data bank. Did that sort of thing have your grandmother's fingerprints on it?
Well, that was just being a student of the game. And that was probably a form of analytics when you think of it. What I did was track every pitch, where the pitch was, whether I swung at it, if I took it, whether it was a breaking ball or a fastball, again, the location, and what the situation was, so that I could get sort of an inkling on how the opposition was going to approach me and what adjustments I would have to make. And I did this between at bats, pretty much. I kept a book on the bench itself so that I wouldn't have to really kill myself thinking back through the situations that occurred in the game. So this, for me, was just probably something that would help me. I would study the book, depending on what team we were playing. And even though we had scouting reports, I didn't rely solely on that. I took it as an individual thing. Well, this is how teams, I should expect them to come out and approach me, and what I need to do going forward, depending on what the situation is.
Okay, so you were in the big leagues 20 years. That speaks for itself, but there was an exclamation point put on that in 2010 when you were voted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Now, for every player, when they get that news, that is an exciting, unforgettable day. So if you would take us through the emotions of getting that news that you were going to Cooperstown.
Well, I had been on the ballot for 9 years already, and I just felt that 2010 probably was my best window to get in. I didn't feel that there were people that I needed to hurdle. They were already in, the people that were ahead of me. And I did something that I had never done before. I got up that morning and I went to the gym, I worked out, and I went to the grave sites of both my mother and my grandmother, who had passed earlier on. And I just wanted to thank them for the role that they played, for having me responsible for where I was in my life at that particular time. And it was a very emotional day for me. I just, I knelt at my grandmother's grave and my mother's grave, and I said to the both of them, if something happens today, what I think is going to happen, I just want to make sure that I made you proud. And I want to thank you for everything that you did for me in my life to get me to this point in my life. And I got up, I left the cemetery, I went home, and I was very exhausted at that point because of the workout. And then visiting the cemetery, and I said to my wife, I'm going to take a shower and I'm going to try to take a quick nap prior to the announcement of the inductees that particular year. And I always felt that if you were going to get in, you would probably get tipped off a little bit so that you could make plans or preparations, but there was no such thing. And I kind of felt that, well, maybe this is going to be another year of disappointment. And I had my wife awaken me at 5 minutes to 1. And I said, I'm supposed to get the call at 1 o'clock, where there was no call. And I looked at her and I said, well, I guess it's going to happen again this year. It's not going to happen. And, she looked at me and she just gave me a nod and she walked out of the room. And about 5 minutes later, the telephone rang, and I knew that if I was going to get the call, it was going to come from New York. That was going to be a 212 area code. And it was going to be president of the baseball writers. And I'm looking at the phone, and it's a 212 area code. And the phone rang 5 times. And my wife walked back in, she looked at me, she said, aren't you going to answer it? And I guess just for that brief moment, I was kind of shocked at who it might be and what was about to happen. And I finally picked up the telephone and I said, hello. And sure enough, on the other end was the president of the Baseball Writers Association. He said, Andre, he said, I'm calling you to congratulate you as the lone inductee into the class of the 2010 Baseball Hall of Fame.
Now, Andre, that was more than a decade ago, and in any situation, personal or professional, the passage of time can sometimes or oftentimes afford us perspective, and we look at things that happened in the past, and maybe we look at them a bit differently. Now that this is more than a decade ago, do you have a different sort of appreciation for this accomplishment than you might have had on the day that you got the good news?
Well, I just feel that when you're all worthy, and even though it took me 9 years to get in, it really did lose some of its luster during the course of that time. And I have a different appreciation for it, or I had at that time, because I really wanted both my mother and my grandmother to witness that particular moment. My grandmother, she passed away as a result of Alzheimer's, and she never really got to see me play professionally. And my mother would always say to me, it's inevitable. It's going to happen at some point in time. They can't keep you out. And this is what I sort of lived with for those 9 years. And when she passed away, that was probably the hurting part of it, because the people that were most important to me wasn't going to witness it. And I look back on it and, I just say, well, it is what it is. But the fact of the matter is that I knew I had their blessings. My grandmother, in growing up, she wanted me to get my education with the idea of, if you can play the game and you could play it, if you're good at it, someone is going to take notice. And my mother always said, you've had a very stellar, exciting playing career. And if, you just let the process play itself out, that you will be rewarded even further in the future. And these are the things that was important to me along the way. And that's why I probably had a little bit of a different feel at that particular time than it does now.
By the way, if you like what you're hearing on this segment, we invite you to subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the links below. Once there, you will see a bell icon. And if you click on that, we will notify you when we post a new interview. Now, back with Andre Dawson. Andre, I want to move over to your cancer journey. For all of us who are diagnosed, there is some stage, some point, some event, something that lets us know that something isn't quite right. What was that for you? Something in a doctor's office, something you felt? When did you notice that something might be wrong?
Well, Bruce, it's funny because working out has always been pretty much a part of my daily routine. To be an athlete is something that you have to do. It's a necessity because you got to prepare for what your job is. So I had been a workaholic when it came to going to the gym and putting the time and effort in. And as a process of putting the uniform on, when I was working with the Florida Marlins, you have to go through a physical. That physical takes place just about the second week of spring training. And prior to going on the field, you go through all of the tests, you do your blood work. And funny, because as good as I was feeling, I felt that I could probably still play the game. I probably couldn't run anymore, but I still had the basic instincts, even though I was an older individual. Just wishful thinking. But after the situation with going through the physical, I was summoned by the doctor in his office about a week later. And he said, I have something I want to share with you, and you give me your thoughts. He said, your PSA came back elevated. And I didn't have a clue about what he was talking about. And he said at some point, he said, it's not urgent. He said, but at some point you probably want to visit a urologist. And my thinking, okay, my feeling the way that I feel, there's no urgency. I kind of Googled what is a urologist. And then I kind of got a little bit leery because now we're talking about your prostate. And I was aware that my brother had prostate issues earlier to the point where he had to have his prostate removed. And I elected to wait until the off season. I let the entire season pass, and I went to see a urologist in October. This was March when we did the actual physical. And I went to see the doctor, and I did a physical examination, and he said, well, everything looks fairly normal. He said, however, to be on the safe side, you may want to do a biopsy. And I was all in. I said, yes. I said, if they detected some issues back in March, I would just want to make sure I clear everything up. So we did a biopsy, and he wanted me to come back in his office. He wanted to have a conference with me. And he didn't really see anything on the phone. And that's what kind of frightened me, because I'm like, well, where are we going from here? And he looked at me, and he had this look on his face, and he said, I'm sorry to break the news to you. He said, but a few of the samplings came back positive. And I just got quiet. I really didn't say anything. And he said, think about how you want to proceed, and we could talk about it over the next week or so. And for me, it was tough going home because I had to break the news to my wife. And I saw her tear up, and I said, hold on. It's not as bad, hopefully, as, you're thinking that it is. The doctor says he wants to meet with me again. And at that point, I gave a lot of thought to it about, how I wanted to proceed. He did mention some of the procedures that were available. And the word cancer, for whatever reason, kind of frightens you. And as good as I was feeling, I just said, you know what? If this is something that I'm going to have to tackle with, I just want it out of my body, period. And I don't want to get any radiation or anything like that. I just want the prostate out of my body. And I met with the doctor, and we both agreed that we would go the route of the robotic surgery. And I could only think at that time, if this is the right course that I'm going, and if this is what's going to cure me, then I'm buying all in what, I'm hearing from the doctor. And I did elect to go ahead and do the surgery. It was back in December of 2012. And I was told, the following spring training, when I went back to the Florida Marlins to take another physical, that my PSA was 0 point. And the doctor looked me in the eye, and he smiled, and he said, my friend, you're cancer-free.
Now, it sounds like that this was an easy call for you, not a pleasant call, but it was an easy call to go with the robotic surgery because, different cancers present different problems to different people, and some cancers don't have a whole lot of options. But usually with prostate cancer, most times when people are diagnosed, they do have some choices as to which way to go. Was there any hesitation on your part before going with the robotic surgery? It sounds like there wasn't.
Well, the first thing he did also mention was, he said, how was your sex life? And I said, it's fine. I said, I don't have any problems. I said, I don't think my wife have any problems. So he said, okay. He said, we're going to probably try to be as minimal invasive as possible. And he said, this is what, probably some of the consequences, erectile dysfunction, that sort of thing. He said, it can occur. He said, but we could tackle that later on. I said, well, Doc, I said, you know what? I'm 58 years old now, and that stuff it's not that important to me anymore. I just want to know that I'm going to be cancer free. And he smiled at me again. He said, we're gonna do real well together. So I just, like I said, I was really disappointed at, hearing that this was a problem that I had to tackle. I just felt that, I wasn't, in a sense, a person that, things like this is not going to happen to. I never had that kind of attitude. I just said, okay, this is where I am at a point in time in my life. You get old and you experience whatever. And knowing that, that type of cancer probably affects, Black men and do it at an aggressive rate is something that I really had to tackle. And I realized the high mortality rate amongst Black men. And I just, simply thought and said to myself, hey, I just want to be on the safe side. I want to move forward in the most positive and productive manner. And that's where I was with it.
Now, you had mentioned earlier on in your life when you were, trying to get your baseball career going, you mentioned the tremendous volume of support that you had from your family, and this took place after you were voted into the Hall. And by the time you were voted into the Hall, some of your family members who were great providers of support had passed on. At that time, even though it looks like this is a problem you ran toward instead of running from, what were your sources of support after you got this news, Andre?
Well, I just tried to not keep it private per se, because I work with the Sylvester Cancer Center here in Miami to help promote prostate cancer awareness and screening. And with that, you, of course, had to go public. The media wanted to interview you and know, where you were, how you were feeling, and so on and so forth. And that was probably an eye-opener for my family outside of my immediate family, because I didn't really enlighten them in a sense. But one thing about the robotic surgery is it really beat me up in a sense, because I lost, I lost 22 pounds over the course of that first month. I actually got back down to what my playing weight was when I retired. And I just knew, there was a journey, there was a process after the surgery going forward to just get back to feeling good again. And again, my source of comfort was having my family there to see and help me through that process until I was able to get back on my feet and feel that I was back to normal.
Our guest is Andre Dawson, prostate cancer survivor and Baseball Hall of Famer. He's taking us through his journey with prostate cancer. And Andre, you had talked about one of the areas in which men are affected after they go through some sort of prostate cancer procedure. I want to ask about the other piece in all this, because prostate cancer can affect you one way or another where urination is concerned. To what degree were you affected in that area?
Well, I felt that I was urinating more at night, and it would awaken me in the wee hours, say, 3 or 4 o'clock. And then I was going back to the restroom again around 6 o'clock. And I also noticed that I didn't have as steady a flow as I would normally have. And of course, I didn't know if, what was going on, if there was a problem. I stood there with my eyes halfway open, just saying, okay, hurry up, get this over with so I can get back into bed. And that's pretty much how it was.
Now, your procedure was in 2015, and that was more than 5 years ago, but for a lot of us who... 2012, excuse me. But for a lot of us who undergo some sort of prostate cancer procedure, kind of the big threshold is getting to the 5-year mark, and you have passed that now. At what point did you feel like you were starting to get the upper hand on this?
Well, I've been feeling fairly well, for quite some time now. And I paid no attention to the 5-year threshold. As a matter of fact, I had to really think deep and hard. Well, when did I actually have the surgery itself? Was it 2013, 14? And then I was, okay, no, it's 2012, Mr. Dawson. And I tell my wife, I say, all right, thank you. So I just knew that I was being still screened. I was still taking my blood work, getting my blood work done as a result of having physicals with the ball clubs that I was working for, and the PSA was still down. So for me, there was no reason to believe that, I was going to be affected one way or the other.
Now, you had mentioned that for quite some time it was part of your day-to-day regimen, doing a lot of working out. Do you still do that? Can you still go to the gym and have a quality workout?
Bruce, God is my witness. Yesterday was the first day that I've gone back to the gym as a result of the pandemic. Last year, it was actually mid-March, when everything was shut down out in Arizona as I was working with the Chicago Cubs. And when I flew back home, I didn't go to the gym because that's when it started that the pandemic is amongst us and things are going to start closing up. So I took all of that time to kind of use protocol, precautions, and guidelines and adhere to what I was hearing, and that was not venture to crowded places, social distance, and I just refused to go to the gym. And I got vaccinated about a month ago. I got my first vaccination, then I got my second shot, and I went through the 2-week period, incubation period, when it came to the antibodies kicking in. And yesterday was the first day. I would go and assess the situation to see what it was like, but yesterday was the first day that I actually went back to the gym. I did a lot of stuff here at home, bicycling and doing a lot of stretching and working with medicine balls, but I just refused to go to the gym until I really felt that it was safe.
But if you wanted to go to the gym, which you just got back into a day or two ago, you could still have a quality workout. In other words, it was only the gym that was keeping you from going to the gym, but there was nothing physical keeping you from having a good workout.
No, not at all. I still felt great. And I was starting to notice how gravity, once you get older, starts to pull down. And I didn't believe in all of that COVID-20 nonsense, but it started to show a little bit after about 6 months. And I was anxious actually to get back. And I just said, you know what? The stuff that I'm doing here at home is not enough. The quality is a lot different. I really can't wait to get back to the gym.
Now, let's talk about screening. You had mentioned the importance of screening, and is that a message that you bring to many of your friends who are of a certain age that they have to start thinking about prostate cancer? Do you bring that to their attention?
Oh, yes, especially people of color and in the African American community, because it's recommended that you start as early as 40. And you got to really, this is something, you don't want to play around with. And you just got to work closely, with your doctor, whomever that might be, and evaluate what your options are if you've ever been diagnosed, and you move forward with your decision making. And early detection is the key.
All right, Andre, we're going to wrap things up now. And while we start our interviews from the same place, we like to kind of end from the same place. And I'm asking you to, and to some degree, you've already answered my question, but I'm going to ask it maybe in a slightly different way. But if you found yourself with a private audience with someone who had just been diagnosed with prostate cancer, or if they're in this sort of interim period between when they hear that they might be a candidate and when they get diagnosed. If you had a message for that person, what would the message be?
Well, don't lose sight of, what it is you're about to encounter. Just trust the people that you got to work with. And even though cancer probably is going to frighten you to a degree, but it's not the end of the world. It can be cured if it's caught in its early stages. And just, have the attitude that, you know what, well, I got to make some adjustments in my life now, whatever those adjustments may be. And you move forward. You put your best foot forward. It can really go a long way in helping you, with your self-esteem, with what you got to go through to encounter the positive results that you want to have. And just, believe in the system. It does work. And again, believe, have prayer, have faith, and, just thank God for where you are in your life and pray for peace and whatever blessings he can bestow upon you.
All right, outstanding, Andre. I know that there's a lot of demand for your time, so I really appreciate your taking the time to talk with us today. Thanks so much for being with us on Cancer Interviews.
Thank you, Bruce, and it's my distinct pleasure.
And that's going to wrap up this segment of Cancer Interviews. We hope that what you heard can aid your cancer journey, either for yourself or for somebody you know. So until next time, we'll see you on down the road.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information, please visit us online at cancerinterviews.com. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you back here again next time on the Cancer Interviews Podcast.